Anyway, guys, welcome to another video, to another Mainmeister and Chums Talk Pish, more specifically, and I'm delighted to have my good old mate, Mr. Delboy, back again. He's in the room. How you doing, Del?
Hello, I'm fine. Thank you very much, Alan. And yourself?
I'm not bad, mate. Have you got snow down in... Where are you about, by the way? I don't want your address and postcode, but what part of Scotland are you in?
Oxfordshire.
South Scotland then, right? Okay,
South Scotland. The Midlands. I suppose West Midlands is Oxford, isn't it? I suppose.
I was down in Oxford. When did I drive down there? I was down there. My daughter would have been about 2, so she's 17. So what would that be? 15 years ago. In fact, one of the guys I have done a video. Mark Racing. Mark. He was the guy that started up the whole Retrovision, which was like the original computer meetup, so people go and play video games, and that then became your Play Blackpools. Mark does tune into the Sunday streams. I went down to see Mark. He lives in Oxford as well, actually. And yeah, I was down there, 15 years ago, and I drove down, and I actually did it in one sitting. Never again. It's about 600 miles or something. It's something ridiculous.
Yeah, it's that's what I was thinking. I was going, well, look, if this meeting and everything ever does happen after the pandemic, that's a heck of a trip.
You know what? It doesn't matter. I would drive. It wouldn't matter how far I would drive any distance for mates. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
The thing is, what we'll do, what we'll need to do is we'll. What do you call it? Yeah, once things get back to normal, which they will, we'll get a meeting at a arcade club, and we can all arrange to meet and whatever. Yeah, that's something I'm looking forward to doing. It's been way too long.
Yeah, because I mean, thinking about what people have said in the past, I was just wondering. I think the furthest would be Panther, wouldn't it? Devonshire, Devon.
Yeah, he's.
Cornwall.
We'll need to see how to get him up. Yeah, I mean, I don't think he drives actually. Yeah, we'll come up with something. We'll come up.
I was just thinking, let the bastard walk. I mean, he knows I'm only joking. So
yeah, I used to bring. See, you were the young for the Lacosa and Panther, and me Yang, because you were always very polite, and we were the ones that do swearing. But I see we've now dragged you screaming down
that's Panther. That is, he brings out the worst in just about everybody. But it's sometimes a bit difficult actually, because I do so much Microsoft Teams, and all that talking at work, and if you're not minding your P's and Q's an awful lot, it can slip into business life. That's not good. So I have, when I come back here, I probably do let off a little bit of steam by probably letting in the odd swear word.
Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, you know what? I mean, my mum, God rest her soul, I mean, I always remember saying to me when I was about 16, she says, I know you probably swear, son. She says, but woe betide if I ever hear you swear in front of me. You're not too young to go across my knee and I'll...
Yeah, that's it. You're not too old to go across my knee.
I would never ever swear. I used to class myself as I don't swear, but you know what? I think most people do, and I don't actually see anything wrong with swearing. There's swearing just out of being foul mouthed, and I don't think I do, and I don't think any of my friends do. You know, I mean, Billy Connolly said that, or wasn't it Billy? You know what? That annoys me. Anything that somebody Scottish has said, it's always accredited to Billy Connolly. Or credited, I should say, to Billy Connolly. In fact, probably lots of famous people supposedly said something and said, well, actually, I didn't say that. But probably Einstein, he's probably had more things as well. That was Einstein. Yeah. But in fact, you know what it was? It was a film called Angel Share. I don't know, have you seen Angel Share?
It rings a bell, but I really, at this moment, I can't think of that one. No.
Right, well, trust me, did you like Train Spotting?
Yes.
Well, I'm saying it's like Train Spotting. It's like Train Spotting because it's got Scottish people in it. It's set in Glasgow, and I mean, Train Spotting is a black comedy. There's some dark stuff in Train Spotting. Angel Share has nothing like that, but it is fantastic. I mean, the guy that plays the main part, without spoiling it, it's a group of people who are serving community service. They've got to do community service, and I'm not going to spoil it at all. But it's a really nice story. But the guy that plays the main part he was in Borstal when he was young, and so part he's playing is kind of pretty much what he was. And he's appeared in a few other things fairly recently, but it's brilliant. It's Scottish humour at its absolute best. I'd never even heard of it until my sister mentioned it about maybe 3-4 years ago, and I watched it, and it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. You need to watch it.
I watched Train Spotting because somebody told me about a film called Shallow Grave. That's another Danny Boyle film, you see. So, and I really liked Shallow Grave, so I looked forward to Train Spotting. And Train Spotting was good, but I still prefer Shallow Grave, believe it or not. I'll watch that one more than I'll watch Train Spotting, weirdly enough. But I've got a question for you, because you were talking about what your mother might say, because about swearing and stuff. My mother used to threaten me with the wooden spoon. Now I don't know what your mother threatened you with, but she used to have this wooden spoon that she had in the kitchen, right? Great big thing, and she used to say, "I'm going to smack your backside with this wooden spoon if you're not behaving yourself." You know what I mean? Used to put the fear of God into me. I mean, you look at it now and you think, why was I scared of that? My mum wouldn't do that anyway. But I was wondering, were you threatened with anything that you knew that was never going to happen? But I
think the thing that I was threatened with was just, wait till your dad comes home.
Oh, right.
And, I think once. I can't remember. I can't remember what age I was. 27-year-old. I mean, once I got put over my dad's knee, and it was like boom, 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 smack bottom. Nowadays, of course, you get put in jail for that because it's illegal to have children.
And I take it you didn't follow suit with your daughter, so you've brought her up totally different, but has brought up with the same ideals, I suppose, and you didn't need to do all of that,
It didn't do us any harm.
No,
I don't think so. But anyway, listen, it's a retro channel. We better get.
Yes.
We can talk about smacking children for another day, possibly. But I've got one topic now. I don't think I've been asked questions about this over the years, but I don't think I've ever really spoke about it in any real in depth. So I thought it'd be quite good fun just to kind of hear somebody else's opinion on this. And I'm going to call it the rise and fall of the video game magazine.
Ah, right. Yep.
Computer game magazine, call it whatever you want, or even just a magazine about games, about computers. So, I mean, I've got origins. I mean, presumably, I've got an absolute vast collection of PDF magazines that I've collected over the years, some really early stuff. And I find the whole thing fascinating. Even nowadays, I love looking at some of the old magazines. And my favourite, I'm going to get it out now, but I mean, I've mentioned it loads of times. One of the things that I remember finding was I think it was a 1982 computer magazine, and it had an advert for a 30 meg MB disk drive. And it was either £3,000 or £5,000.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was it might have been 1979 or something, but it was 30 meg, and it was like £3,000 or £5,000. Now, if you divide 30 meg by whatever it was, and then what I did was it worked out to be, I can't remember exactly what it was, but then I worked out that. I had just recently bought a couple of years ago a 2 terabyte hard disk. Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. 1 gig would be 1,000.
1,024 meg, yeah.
We'll say 1,000.
Yeah.
That's 1 meg. Sorry, one gig would be 1,000 meg. 1 terabyte is 1,000 gig.
Yeah.
So that would be 1,000 times 1,000. But the fact that this was a 2 terabyte, it was 2,000 times 1,000. Anyway, if you work it out, it worked out. It worked out that if you bought, based on today's money, if you bought a 30 meg hard disk now, based on today's money, it would cost you, it was something like 0.001 pence.
Yeah.
However, if you based what 1 meg cost in 1979 and then you multiply that by 1,000, it was for a 2 terabyte drive back in 1979, based on that price, it was going to cost you, I think it was £32 million.
Yeah, by the street, basically.
Mental, mate. Can you imagine? Saying to somebody, or going back to 1979 from the future and saying, "How much did you pay for your 30 meg hard disk?" It was my work. It was £3,000. I've got one that's 1,000 times bigger, and I paid 60 quid for it. And be like, but that's worth 32 million.
Yeah. And just like you've done in the past, you'd then pick up your little memory stick and say, "Look at the size of it! Look.
Size of my nail. I mean, I've got one there. It's 256 gig, in the size of my pinky. I've got my entire record collection, my entire photos, my entire every video game ever released, every arcade that ever existed in Blackpool, multiplied by 1,000, is all in that thing. The size of my thing. Insane. Anyway, you're waffling, right? Back in track. Games magazine. So yeah, I mean, they obviously started off. I mean, before computers became mainstream, you had your, what did you have? I mean, you had your I think the first best known one was like the Z8. Was it Z80? I think it was called ZX80.
Yeah.
ZX80.
ZX80. Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of kit format. And then I think that's when, even before that, that's when computers started coming out. There was the Tandy, I think it was. If you look at some of the real old computers, the original home computers were Tandy. So computer magazines sprung up to kind of accompany sort of hobbyists, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those periods that I've spoken to you about before, because as I said, my sister had a Saturday job. So, and it was one of the first sort of like computer stores that you'd have in the little shopping centre that we had. And it was almost set up like the Carphone warehouses are now. You know, they had an Atari side, they had a Commodore side, they had whatever. But the ZX80 was a kit form. And I saw that. I must admit, I heard about the ZX80 through a paper. I think it was, you could buy it in kit form for about £69-79, and I think it was £99, I think, if you bought it made already. And there was a wait list for it, because I believe it was like impossibly hard to get hold of. I had it, and it was for its, you know, you back then you thought it was a technical marvel, you know. I mean, but
did you? I was ZX80, did you?
Yeah. That was one of my first computers, was a ZX80, and I had a ZX81, and then I had a VIC-20. So I didn't go to a Spectrum. I had a VIC-20 before the Spectrum. So touching those dead flesh keyboards, you know, and this was a follow-on after the Atari 2600. You see, because I'd had a console. I'd gone from Pong to an Atari cartridge system to a computer, and that was my first computer, if you see what I mean. Mm-hmm. So it just got better and better, really, because people would bring back kitted computers and get themselves better computers. Like they'd always bring in their I don't know, their Dragon 32 and take away an Atari 800 or whatever. You know what I mean? They weren't getting on with it, and they would trade it in.
Yeah.
So if it was broken, I was given it sometimes, and you know, and then I'd do it all up or whatever. You know, I was one of those people that I could change a plug when I was about 4 years old. You know what I mean? So my sister saying, "Here you are, look, there's some house for you to play with." I'd get the screwdriver out and go, "Oh, right, okay, like this." And sometimes it was very easy to get it going, because it was just like you could see that it was just something had just come away. And other times it was a cracked case. There was nothing wrong with it. It was just had a cracked case, and they gave it to my sister and said, "You can have that." I got my Spectrum that way. It was it had the metal across the plastic. You know, the plastic goes round and it's got a sort of a ridge. It had cracked away from the corner, so they couldn't do anything with it. You couldn't buy molded cases in those days. There was no +2 kit or anything, so they gave it me. So that was the way I got my first Spectrum. So
nice.
Yeah.
So you're a tinkerer then, eh?
Yeah, I was a definite tinkerer. But that's how I got introduced to the TI-99 for, you know, like you had the 4A.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, the early early magazines. I mean, I'm going to share a screen just now, actually. So we look. I don't know if you can. In fact, I should really. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to. In fact, how do I make the text bigger? Can I make the text? Nah, I can't make the text bigger.
Can you not use the wheel mouse to zoom in and out? Hold the shift key down and move the mouse.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way, like we were doing earlier on. I'm just going to make the resolution of my other monitor.
Okay.
That'll be the best way to share it. There we go. Right, keep changes. Yep. Right, I'm just going to share this screen. This is just this gives you a kind of brief. I'm going to be saying share screen. There we go. I don't need to share the. Boom. There you are. Okay. These are my multi-format magazines now. I mean, some of these there you can see they're computer gaming. Well, that was always a later one because gaming. But you had stuff like electronic entertainment, game development mag. Well, these are all kind of input. I think was hardcore gamer mag. There we go. Yeah, these are all Odyssey.
I think most people had heard of a Home Computing Weekly because that just was on just about every shelf in every newsagent.
It was weekly. These are the ones that I kind of remember. Not computer games. Personal Computing Weekly. It was probably one of the dullest magazines you could ever get. But this is where something that, you know, I think you and I and other people our age. I'm just going to get rid of that. We want to hide that a wee bit. That people now just think, you think computers, you talk about computer games, but I was excited just to have a computer, that, you know, to have something that you could type your name on or something that you could type in. You could write a program, in my case, you know, think a number between 1 and 100, whatever it was, high, low, whatever. But that was so exciting. So even as a, you know, when I was, what would I be, 16, 17 years old, I absolutely loved looking at. I mean, let's just open up one practical computing. No, that'll be a minute. That's just all going to be thing me. Yeah, so it wasn't really so much about. There we go. Can we see that?
Yeah, you can see this one's quality. Look, with black and white. Yeah, I remember.
ZX81 keyboard tone, whatever the hell that is. I'm trying to see. Oh, there you go. June 1980, 30 pence, no less.
Yeah, 82. So
look at that. I mean, they've actually got that as a feature, defining your own characters. Whoa!
So that I mean, 1982. So we are talking VIC 20, ZX81. Yeah. Well, so I've already sort of got the era already.
There we go. Yeah, ZX Hardware Professional 40 key Sir Computers. I wonder if they're still there. What's the chances now? What we should do for a laugh? I should actually make a live phone call and phone Sir Computers and see if they can do this.
You'd have to work out what the area code is, because that'd be wrong for a start.
There we go. When Sir Clive Sinclair launched the Spectrum, he said deliver within 28 days. That was 7 weeks ago. Yeah, of course, that's what happened. Eh? It was kind of.
I like the way, if you go back, it's got the reporter. It's got his telephone number. 01, right? Well, that's wrong for a start, because it's like 081. But anyway, yeah, far away, classified.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, so there you go. I mean, these early magazines, it wasn't about computer games. It was just about, because it was the early computers where it was basically geeks with corduroy trousers and Aran jumpers, wasn't it?
Yeah. Here's a top tip for everybody. A question for everybody then. How much was VAT in 1982? Because I can't even remember what that would have been. Was it 15%? What was it, 10%? I have no idea.
Now I should know because I started working in 1985, and I used to do petty cash. Was it maybe 12.5%, or was it 15%? Possibly.
Yeah, so the one that I remember comes to mind, you see, is 15%, because it was 17.50, wasn't it? Then it was 20. So I mean, back in 1982, was it 15%? It must have been lower than that. It must have been.
I can't remember. Something niggles me 12.5%.
Yeah. Somebody can put some intelligent thing in the background there. Look about what that is.
what other channel do we discuss the VAT rate? But the early magazines, it was just about the hobby of computers, you know. And one of the first magazines, in fact, probably let's come out of this. The first magazine that I ever read, and let me just see if I can find it. It was one of these. Now, it's interesting, you don't get them so much now. You know, these, what the hell do you call them? You know, Star Wars, build your own Millennium Falcon over 52 weeks.
Part work stuff.
Part 1, $7.99. Every other part, $15.99. Yeah, you basically get one like Lego brick or something. And if you actually work out, you've probably spent the best part of $3,000 on a magazine called the shitty Millennium Falcon. But you don't get them quite so much now.
Build your own ZX81 in weekly parts. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the very first. I'm going to just. I did do a look at this one many years ago. I'll
tell you my earliest. I don't know which magazine it was, but my earliest memory of buying a computer magazine, it might even be this one, was this portfolio of computers that told you all of the specifications for it, and it had every computer. Had a Commodore 64. Used to go down and said, "This has got sprites. It's got 64K of RAM."
That's the one I'm going to come to. If you just bear with me.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, but that one always springs to mind every time somebody brings up computer magazines to me. I go, "Do you know what? I can't think of what that magazine was called."
Well, there you go. Right. I zoom in. Right, zoom in. Bonk, bonk, bonk. Right, there we are. Right. So it was the home computer course, mastering your home computer in 24 weeks.
That's
a spectrum there. So this was the one that my mum and dad bought me this magazine, and you'll see here in a second. Remember that? What were they called again? A turtle.
Oh, a turtle. Yeah. used to draw. Yeah, used to tell it to draw in, you know, go forward, back, left, and I forgot what the language was. Was it Pascal or was it Fortran? I can't remember, but it was good for drawing.
How shit is that? You want to be saying that? I think I'm better keeping it like that.
Build one of those in weekly parts. Yeah.
Wait a minute, right? I want to get back to that again. Oh, hang on, zoom in. There we go.
They're right con, aren't they? Though these buying things in weekly parts. My God.
Yeah, as I say, you could buy the thing probably 10 times over. So yeah, I mean, it was all very dry. I mean, what's it talking about there? It's telling you about, you know, off and on. Why software? The micro is a natural teacher. It's useful for records. Computers are invented by science, games and entertainment. Always remember, did you ever see the home computer program? And it had, what was he called again? It had Chris Serrell and what was his name? He was in Micro Live.
Did he have a beard?
No, he didn't have a beard.
Was he the largest guy with glasses?
Yeah. What was he? He was a computer. You know what? Wait a minute. Let me. I can find it. It doesn't matter. I've got all these on my computer. But anyway, he was showing off the different. Chris Serrell said, so what's the difference between all these different computers? And he said, this is a Commodore 64. And he says, you can do word processing. And he types a few things. He says, you can also use it for doing accounts. And then he said, "Oh, what's this? Is this a game?" Yeah, he says it could also be used for stupid games, but that's a waste. if only he knew.
Yeah.
But so anyway, the page that there we go.
That's the thing. That's the I remember.
Yeah, let's just peruse it now. When I got this magazine, hang on a second. How do the hand? That's what I want to do. I looked at this page over and over and over and over again. Now, I can't remember what kind of price point my mum and dad gave me for a computer, but I looked at all these and I thought, I want an Atari, but there was no way they were ever going to buy one of these for me. Color Genie. I mean, I absolutely loved. I know we're getting off topic slightly, but I absolutely loved that time in my life because it was so exciting. Because you had to what was your budget? And that one you can get you can connect that to a monitor. You can get a disk drive with that one. That's got 16K. I mean, there was a couple. Was there any of these that you really wanted?
Oh, I've always, because my sister worked in a store, I always wanted the Atari 800. I mean, this was at a time. This is 1982, so I had a VIC-20. So the Atari was something that I wanted to move from because I had an Atari 2600. So it was like, I want the Atari 800, but it was just way too expensive.
I mean, how much is it? £300. Yeah. Yeah, which back in, I mean, that was more than I was. Well, I didn't start working until another 1985. So I don't know when this came out.
Yeah,
something like that. So I mean, that was a month's wages for a lot of people. I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot of money. This for some reason, the Lynx. I just that looks amazing. The Lynx was one I wanted. I mean, at that point, I didn't know what was good. I'd heard of the Spectrum, I'd heard of the Commodore 64, but I just thought this looks great. That and where is it? The sword. I just thought.
The sword. Well, you got one of those, haven't you?
I have, and I've used it like once. But I just thought I don't know why I like that. I just thought it looked nice. I've no idea. Actually, I was quite surprised when I looked at this fairly recently because I thought it was going to say this powerful Japanese computer, but it doesn't really. I mean, standard memory 4K. I mean, you're not going to want to buy a computer because it's well constructed and it's got a power on indicator.
Yeah.
Keys to rubbery. Yep. Limited basic. Yeah. And there's your ZX81. What was that? Price £45.
Well, it had been out a while, you see, by then. So I mean, when that first came out, it was priced like the ZX80. It was like £60-79 in kit format and £99 in a constructed format. So,
and of course, my mum and dad. Do you remember Comet? Remember Comet?
Oh yeah.
Curry's. My mum and dad said, "Hey, we're going to get you a computer for your birthday, son." Oh, great! I can't remember why, but I didn't get to go. I think I don't know why I didn't get to go, but they went away to get me my computer, and I think I'd sort of written down Spectrum Commodore 64, and they came home with that. And the first thing I did,
we didn't get a Comet for ages. We in our shopping centre, it was really weird because they had a Currys and a Dixon's right dead opposite each other, and yet actually they bought each other out, didn't they? So they actually became one store, and they still had them as separate entities. But you used to go into those stores and you'd go in there and you'd go, yeah, I'm going to program my name all over the screen, and some guy would come up and say, can I help you? And you go, no, it's all right, I know how to use this, thanks, I'm just looking, and all that sort of stuff. And after about half an hour, I'd say, look, if you ain't going to buy something, you got to leave. Oh, all right.
Yeah, so my mum and dad.
The borders flash, that sort of thing.
My mum and dad brought this home, and I'm like, oh, let me look at my home computer magazine. Advantages, great keyboard. Disadvantage, extremely slow basic, limited choice of software, lack of software, and slow basic makes this an unpopular machine.
It's a bit harsh. To be quite honest, that's a bit of a harsh summary, I would have said on that.
Well, funny thing is, I've through the wonders of whatever it is, emulation, I've got a really good Texas emulator, and there's some. Was it Donkey Kong? I did an Arcade Perfect Live Donkey Kong, and I'll tell you that it was really good. It was really good, and it just goes to show that in the right hands, it could have been just as popular as the Spectrum. Let's be honest, the Spectrum hardware, compared to other machines, is quite poor. But what was a stroke of genius was the fact that the price point. I mean, I think they got it down to under £100 eventually.
Yeah.
And that was, the Commodore 64 was going to cost you £200. Spectrum was like £100. Well, it says, I've taken it off the screen there, £99 for the 16K or £125. He made it affordable, and it flew off the shelves, and the rest is history. There's some utterly fantastic games. But any of these computers could have probably been massive, but it was just about getting. It's like the old Betamax VHS thing. Apparently, Betamax was a better system, but it's you get enough people to buy it.
It's actually quite amazing to think back to those days, because if I remember rightly, they flew off the shelves of W.H. Smith, even though we had a Currys and a Dixons, and they had the computers all there, all displayed and everything. Your mother went and bought it from W.H. Smith. They just had them on the shelves, didn't even display them in half the W.H. Smiths, but they flew off the shelves of W.H. Smith's Spectrums.
So to anybody that's been trying to get a PlayStation 5, back in 1982, you could walk into your high street and just go, I'll have that Spectrum, please.
Yeah.
And none of these scalping bastards.
Oh. Well, what we both think are scalpers, and less said about that the better.
I saw a thing in Facebook actually this afternoon, popped up on Sky News. Apparently, it's a bizarre thing. A Scottish MSP is trying to make scalping illegal.
Right.
Fair play.
How are they going to do that though? They can't even do that with concert tickets. So touts have been around for years. You never stop that. They tried. So how are you going to stop a scalper with technology?
Yeah.
They're technology savvy as it is. So
don't know how it's going to work, but anyway, getting back to video games. So yeah, I mean the early video game magazines, it was a niche hobby. It wasn't about games. It was just about computers themselves.
Yep.
Then obviously, I think once the sort of like the what's the right word for it? Once we knew what computers were going to rise to the top, aka the Spectrum, probably BBC, Commodore 64, then we had the rise of the computer and video game. Computer and video game magazine.
Yep.
First one probably I would probably say it was the computer and video CNVG, I think.
Yep.
Let's have a quick wee swatch at that. Excuse me. There we go. Let's just share the screen there. Bunk. And this was the point where people suddenly realise, oh, look at all these things you can do in your computer. You can actually, because before that it was purely, I don't know, type in games. It was like type in football pools games and really boring stuff like that. Then suddenly computer and video games came along, and what's it saying there? Space Invaders. They had type in games obviously, but they also actually did game reviews, and that's when I don't think they even mentioned. Did they mention any kind of utilities in this? I think it was all computer and video games, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Hence the title, funnily enough.
I like the corner. It says the first fun computer magazine, because they were all stuffy and boring.
Cutting out, we don't want to know that a 30 meg disk drive is going to cost you $4,000. Yeah, the first fun. So this was probably the first magazine that I'm aware of. Maybe in America there was other ones that came along, but this was the first fun computer magazine, certainly in the UK, that came along. And that's, if we just kind of quickly noodle through it, let's have a look. Bill Budge's Raster Blaster.
Raster Blaster. Look at that. It's for the Apple II. Now, I don't know how many people had Apple IIs, but that's an expensive computer if you're talking about people having them at home. My God. Look at the VIC-20 there. Look,
There you go.
189.95, including VAT.
The Vic, I know. It's always interesting when you look at the price of that. So, I mean, people going about, who was I talking to? Yeah, I think I was talking to somebody, I don't know, a couple of 6 months ago, and they were talking about the PlayStation. They said, "Oh, you're going to get one?" I went, "I'm not real interested," but I says, "Yeah, of course I'm going to buy one because that's what I do." I mean, my daughter's she's pretty keen on it as well. And they went, "Oh, it's 500 quid." I says, "Aye," but I says, "You work out how much you." I said, "Did you have a Spectrum?" "Aye." Says, "Aye, how much is that?" 150 quid. Aye, £150 in 1982 was a damn sight more than £500.
Yeah.
Damn sight more. So there you go, a VIC-20, £189.95, including VAT. Does it tell you how much VAT is? Don't think it does.
No.
It doesn't, eh? God damn it. I love how it says there, the Vic Centre is easy to reach, just off the A40, close to North Acton tube station.
You can see how they tried to big it up. I mean, if you look, it says the VIC-20 lets you build a system, needs a budget that the budget dictates. You can expand its memory to 32K. The one thing it doesn't say is how much memory you get when you first buy it. Right, so it bigs itself up because it says, look, you can have 24 colors, it's got free tone sound, it's got all of this sort of stuff. Doesn't tell you how much memory. It had one of the very low memories, for its day. Yeah. I mean, it had a lot when you consider the ZX81 was 1K, but what I'm trying to say is it doesn't mention that at all in any of that blurb what you get, other than its big bits, which is you get sound, you get color. You can expand it to quite a high chunk of RAM.
Definitely. Yeah.
Oh, there it look. VIC memory 3K, small size, low cost expansion, plugs into the VIC, and see that's telling you again that's an expansion. It's not telling you how much it's actually got. So
being a wee bit cheeky there, I think. Yeah. Does it say? No, it doesn't mention anything there, eh? I don't know what the hell that. A port adapter cable. What the hell that looks like?
Oh, a game port plug, yeah.
Well,
2-in-1 adapter, because the VIC-20 only had one joystick port.
That's right. Listique. There's the French, for any of the French fans out there.
Had £2 postage and packing. What was that for?
What was that?
I was looking at there. It said add £2 for postage and packing for any orders under £50.
So yeah, this was obviously the first kind of gaming magazine, and that's when I think people started to realise that never mind this buying a Spectrum for your homework. It's all about the games, isn't it?
Yeah, it says there as well. Allow 21 days for delivery. It's got you get a 12-month hardware warranty, 7-day money-back guarantee, and allow 21 days for delivery. You imagine that? Yeah, take my £200, which in today's money is something like nearly £1,000, and I've got to wait 21 days for it.
Now we're getting a high horse. If you order something at 10 o'clock the night before on Amazon, it didn't arrive yesterday. I pay my £7.99 Prime, and it's ridiculous. I had to wait a day for it to come. That's shocking. 21 days, eh?
I just thought that was funny as a little side note. 21 days. Nobody would wait 21 days these days. You want a ready-made suit? It's not 21 days.
Just looking at that. Was it simple software switches? Switch exchanges each pair of ROMs into VIC's ROM space, allowing clashing ROMs to be used. That's complete gobbledygook for most people. Plug-in 0-4 sockets are available as optional extras to help.
Yeah, ZIF socket. You know what a ZIF socket is, don't you?
Sorry?
You know what a ZIF socket is, yeah?
No, I've no idea what that is.
If you've ever built your own computer, you'll know that you drop the processor into these little holes, and there's a little lever arm.
Oh, yeah.
And you pull the lever down. That's zero interface. You're pushing down the processor down into a zero interface slot. That's Ziff sockets.
I got you. I love this recommendation. Monster Maze and Maths Hurdler. A fun game with good colour and sound and a mental arithmetic learning game. Highly rated by everyone we have shown it to.
That's 5 people then, isn't it? I mean, you can't really knock the advertising, can you? Because they're probably not lying, but they're not saying, yeah, we showed it to our brother, the postman. You know, actually, well, that's Ziff. I think it was Zero Insertion Force. Do you know, somebody's going to pull me up on that, you know. I hate it when I get letters wrong and all that sort of stuff, but I get a bit tongue-tied when I'm on camera and so forth. So.
And we're giving the Darling brothers a bit of doing for saying on their Codemasters games, absolutely brilliant, said programmer Richard Darling. I mean, these guys are saying everyone that we've shown it to thinks it's brilliant.
yeah. We showed the last V8 to these 2 people, so we decided to release it.
You know, the funny thing is when you know back as a a teenager, looking at these magazines and buying games and all that, you always thought that it was like really, like big businesses and all that. And it's only when, I've been lucky enough to speak to, quite a few people from back in the day. And I interviewed Andrew Hewson down at Blackpool. I was lucky enough to do the panel talk thing with him. And, and he said that when they first, they got a few games written, they just basically turned up with a trestle, a wallpapering table, and they just put all these tapes on it. And he says people are just handing them £5, all these £5 notes, and like, whoa, putting them in a bag, it's things were. And then even like, I know I'm kind of going off topic again, but when I was talking to Sean Sullivan and Andrew Morris of Magnetic Fields, who did the Turbo series, I mean, the Lotus Turbo Challenge games they were some of the best games ever written for the Amiga, and you somehow imagine that it's like 100-team people. And when I first spoke to Sean, because I interviewed Sean a couple of years ago before I met Andrew, and when he told me that there was only him and he did the coding and Andrew did the graphics, it's like, wait a minute, 2 people programmed this, and you get a game like the latest Call of Duty.
Did they say they were in the same room?
No, they just worked separately. They worked separately.
Bit like Elton John, then, isn't it? I mean, he does the music, the other one does the words, never in the same room. He faxes in the words. There you are, got a tune.
That was it. And that's exactly how they worked. Just mental, but you somehow thought. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting you look at magazines like that and you realise this how. I mean, they were basically making it up as they went along because there was nothing that preceded it. It was a completely new industry. And it's fascinating. So we got computer video games, and obviously after the, I mean, did you buy computer video games at the time? You did.
It's one of those things where at the very beginning I bought more multi-format magazines than ever because I was getting lots and lots of different computers to work on. You know, we had apples and pets at school. My sister was working in a store, and I was getting all sorts of different computers back that I could go on. So a multi-format magazine was something that they were more popular anyway because there wasn't any one strong contender, but I could just about do anything I wanted. I just didn't have to go through the magazine just looking for Vic games. Do you know what I mean? And then finding there was only 2 that month. There was something on every page for me. It was later on when I only had 1 or 2 computers that I would then go, right, well, I need to buy Zap because I've got a Commodore 64. That's the only thing I've got now. So I'm not interested in what the Spectrum release is this month and whether it's got Game of the Month and my computer's come second or whatever it is this month in the charts. I wasn't that interested. I only wanted to know anything about Commodore. I don't want to care, about any of the others. So multi-format was big, and that's what I loved about it. So yeah, CMVG was big for me at the beginning.
I mean, I'm just going to share that again. I mean, this is what kind of made mega popular. There you go. This is called. I mean, it runs. I've never even heard of that. A NASCOM 2.
No, I've heard the name. I can't even think what it looks like. The NASCOM too.
I've heard the NASCOM. I've heard the NASCOM, but yeah. So I mean, this was. You know what? I'm just looking at here. I don't know if you can read that. It says print. Now I'm presuming that should say play.
Yeah.
Space Invaders, but I'm guessing that they've deliberately made that plav because, as you know, in the original Space Invaders, it misspells it. Then the little invader comes along and takes the bad letter away, and then it comes back. I wonder if it did that in this.
Yeah, because you can see it's supposed to say print play, and then underneath that print Space Invaders. So it would have been play Space Invaders, and then it's got print score extra base. You can see that's the title page.
Oh, bonus point taken off for aliens spelled wrong. just laughing. We shouldn't scoff because I'm absolutely thick. The object of the game is to destroy the advancing aliens before they land on it.
Yeah, show that to your English teacher and see whether. Can you just mark this for me, sir?
Tisk. I mean, stand in the corner, Mr. Parker and Mr. Brown, eh? Anyway, no, I'm jesting, but what's that? Lines. I don't know what the hell that is. But yeah, I mean, this. There you go. Oh, that's another thing. I mean, you can see how much code you had to type in. But
they rarely showed you a screenshot of it running, did they?
No, because they knew that
because it never did. Apple II system with 16K.
God. There you go. Super Nim is a tactical game of skill which goes one better than the old traditional game. It was a lot of these games are all based on board games, weren't they?
Yeah. Well, you said it best. I think it'd be Lemonade Stand and things like that.
But see, the thing is, I was going to say a kid. I wasn't a kid. I was a teenager. But owning a computer, I and the same yourself. We owned computers before you could just walk in and buy a piece of software off the shelf. So the only way to get a game was either mail order or make up your own one, which excluded me, or else you could type one in out of a magazine. Now, I always thought of this was like free games. Oh, get computer video, you're getting a free computer game. The problem was 9 times out of 10, the C64 never had any. I think because the basics so pants, and even to get a Hangman game, it would be like 10 pages of code. Whereas a equivalent game.
Do you remember? Because you said when you were in one of the questions I asked, I said, "What did you use at school?" And you said, "Oh, we had Apple IIs and that." Do you remember? Do you remember at school where the kid that was selling the games to you got them from? Because I forgot to ask.
The kid that was selling the games, I never. Hang on, Windows Defender did not find any threats since your last summary. Bugger off. Say that again, Dale.
Well, I was just saying that there was always people that would sell you a disc with Pet Invaders on it or whatever it was, and you'd load it up and you'd even get a copy. There'd be somebody with 2 drives and they'd say, "Yeah, give it here. I'll put that across onto your disc for you," and they'd copy it across. But I never thought to ask, where did you get that from? Was that a type-in magazine? Where did you download that from? Where did you actually get that game from? Because that was really quite good, that game. Can't remember where half these games came from at that time.
Originated. The only time I ever got to the only time I ever got to, in fact, the very, very first time, I can't remember, my brain's a bit mashed. The very first time I saw a computer, it was a ZX81 and it was my English class. And I remember my teacher saying, "Oh, I've got this thing called a computer." Oh, and he brought out this ZX81 and he put it on a TV. And it was just like it flashed a word up and then it went off. And then, that didn't exactly get me interested. And then it was geography. And we had a single computer in the whole high school. And it was an Apple II. And I can't even for the life of me, I think it was Lemonade Stand that we got to play. But, out of a class of like 30 people, I mean, I went to comprehensive, whatever it was, a state school. There was like 30 people in a class, so you know, you had maybe like a 5-minute goal. I probably had a handful of shots in that time. So I never really got to play any games. And then I started doing computer O grade, and it was like programming. But I never, because I was like an adult when I first got my computer, I never really, and I used to swap games with not discs, swap tapes and that kind of stuff. But I never bought, and that there was nobody at my school I would like sell games to, or they would sell games to me. You know, I know a lot of people did. You know, there was always a wee guy that sold all the games. But what you're saying is, where did the little kid get a copy of a game for an Apple II?
It's just I remember going to computer class, but then if there was a break on, you know, where you had 15 minutes to get to your next lesson or something, and they were clearing the room and everything, you could actually wander into the computer room, and there'd always be somebody just loaded up Pet Invaders or something, right? And you'd go, oh, can I have a copy of that? And they'd go, yeah, give us your disc, and they'd put it in. But I can't remember if it was a typed in game or whether it was an actual game that you bought or a covered, you know, like you know, whether it was something that they downloaded with the school's modem or whatever it was. But I've just remembered that Lemonade Stand, that was basic, because I remember I pressed run, stop, break, and it said break in line 256. I remember now. But the Space Invaders, I can't remember if that was written in machine code or whether that was, and there's something that you could have actually have bought through a mail order company, or whether that was typed in. But it was a damn good version of Space Invaders. That's all I'm saying. It's just
I think I've seen it. I don't know. I think you probably find that there was always people whose dad worked in a company and they had two computers, and they would bring home a copy of this disc, and there was always somebody whose dad knew somebody or whatever. You know what I mean?
The teachers didn't say a thing. He was going, yeah, have a game on, have a copy, use our computers to copy this game.
Copy them.
Can you do one for me as well? And I told you my little story, didn't I? I used to make them double-sided by punching the hole on the other side of the charging 50 pence, because you soon learned how to do things like that and make a little bit of money in the playground. But yeah, it's just interesting. It came to mind. I was going, where did those games come from? I can't remember.
Mental, I know. So yeah, I mean, as I say, computer magazines like. Sorry, I'm just going to jump back again. I'm keep taking it on and off. Yeah, CVG. It had all these. Type-in games. I'm just curious. So we've had, what is it? We've had one for the Apple II, one for the NASCAR 2.
That's a VIC 20. That one there. That was a VIC 20 game.
Was it?
Yep.
Oh, there you go. All right.
That's VIC 20.
Rainbow Passage. What was that? Is that?
That's an Apple.
Oh, there. Come on. All right. Super Nim. What that's? Zork. Blimey. People complain about the price of games. I mean, look at that. Zork. There's our Play Pool on your Apple. 25 quid. And this was me.
18.95, 24.95. Yeah.
Wow. But yeah, so these early magazines, they basically gave you the opportunity to own a game for, you know, not very much money. Yeah. Then over the preceding years, they obviously became, well, there's one for the Tandy. So a lot of the obscure ones, they obviously, sorry, as we kind of moved on, then they did become more just based on games. And I think eventually, I can't remember when they eventually decided to drop the type-in. Can you remember that at all?
When they what? Sorry.
When did CNVG decide to kind of drop in to abandon the type-in games?
I don't think I saw many type-in games from around about end of '83, beginning of '84. I would have said. When you started to see, you know, like your Crazy Kong that you bring up an awful lot, and you had those home-drawn cassettes. After, when they started to become more like Arcadia by Imagine, I think there was still type-in stuff then, but it didn't last very long. I think it was about 6 months to 12 months, and you'd have to get a particular type of magazine to be able to continue to type them in. because I think that you could still type games in. It's just that you wouldn't be typing them in games like CMVG anymore. They'd be concentrating on.
There's interesting. There's pole position.
What's that for?
For the Spectrum, there's pole position. Whoops, there's Apple II. Now, have a guess when this magazine came out. That was a type in 1984.
Yeah.
So even in 1984, they were still putting out type-in games. So
yeah, I mean, I'm not totally surprised, but it's just I would have thought they would have been starting to sort of phase them out a little bit and put them into other types of magazines. Computer and video games would have wanted to have concentrated on you buying adventure games and cassette games and disc games. And
I mean, I think once games became more readily available in your W.H. Smith, your John Menzies and that, then especially obviously when budget games came along, why would you want to type in a game? I mean, CNVG type-in games were fantastic because they basically gave you a game to play. And again, it's hard for somebody who's like 20 years old to really understand this. But when you appreciate that this thing that we could interact with our TV, it was so magical, and it didn't matter how shit the game was. You're like, I'm playing Space Invaders in my living room. Wow, in my bed, I'm playing Space Invaders. That big thing that your other mates have got to go to the chip shop and put 10 pence in. I can play Space Invaders on my computer, and that was, you couldn't put a price in that. So even though they were absolutely shit,
you typed in those games, and I tell you what, if you got to the end and it worked, you swore blind you wrote the game. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've got a real sense of achievement. It's like, I got it working. Oh yeah. And then if you're anything like me, where I didn't have an awful lot of money and couldn't afford the tape deck, it was like the machine had to be staying on for a week. It weren't turning off because I'm not typing that damn thing in again, and I can't afford the tape deck. So don't ever switch that off. And then you'd get home from school and your mum had switched it off, saying, "You know how much electricity is?" And I'm going, "You turn that off. It took me hours." Type
you type in again, god damn it.
You have to type a bit faster, is all my mum used to say.
But I mean, it was a free game, and obviously once commercial games started, and that's why so many of the games that I play in live streams, etc., are just absolutely shit, because you would in the early days you would just want games. It didn't matter how crap they were. You would copy them, you would buy them, and you would play them. And yet, some of the games you'd play, that's crap. But it was like, it's a computer game, and it's only, I don't know, I mean, on the C64, there were some cracking games from America. Once quality software started to kind of filter its way through into the UK, and your Ocean started to put out some decent software, then people are like, well, I'm not going to type that game in because it's crap. And that's when obviously the quality software improved. Then, of course, the budget games came along, and the quality improved as well.
Now, after the typing craze, and it was a craze. Don't get me wrong. Every time you bought a magazine, you're bound sure you're going to try typing one of these things in.
You bought it for that reason. You bought it to get a game free.
The next big thing that us kids did back in the day was the next buzzword was hacking. It was like, you've hacked into it and you've got ultimate lives. How did you get ultimate lives? Oh, you type in poke, and then you load the cassette, and now you got all the health that you need, and you can get through the game. And although I frown upon that now, I was just intrigued that somebody could type in 3 lines of text, load the game up, and all of a sudden the game was you could complete it. You know what I mean? It was like, and somebody must have actually stopped that game from working, disassembled it all, and then worked out how to do that. Now that's a clever person. And you wondered sometimes, they put them in the magazines, said here's a cheat or whatever it is, and you could get it. You wonder sometimes, who in the right minds did that? Did that come from the coder himself, or did somebody actually take that thing to bits and work out what register it was to make it so that you had 99 lives. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that was the next buzzword after that. But hey, I'm digressing a little bit here. But
I mean, that
was a buzzword.
I always think there was like two types of people. There was folk like myself who I just devoured games. I never even had any desire to think, oh, I wish I could write my own game. When I first got it, I read the book and I started writing some really, when I say basic games, I didn't have graphics. It was just literally, think a number.
Press any key, yeah.
The minute a commercial game came along, that was me. And never even looked at trying to code. But then obviously a lot of the well, in fact, most of the bedroom coders, they were more interested. They probably bought games, played games. I mean, like what do you call them? They wrote the Dizzy games. What they call the Oliver Twins. I mean, they bought games to play, and then even at like 16 years old, they're like, we can actually write something better than that. Jeff Minters, he bought a game. What was the game? Asteroids by S. Munnery on the VIC-20, and Jeff spent £5 in it, and he went, "This is absolutely pish. I can do better than that." And then that started his. So people wanted to write better, whereas it never crossed my mind, "Oh, I'm going to write a game." I just wanted to play them. So yeah, people, they ended up getting more enjoyment out of. They got more enjoyment out of hacking a game or programming games than they did out of playing it. I mean, I had a mate. He's ridiculously wealthy. He lives in India. He works for Texas Instruments. He won a competition back in 1984. It was through his university. No, it must have been a couple of years after I was at university, and it was to basically come up with some new technology. And he was the person that invented, what is that the right word? He came up with a means of, an oscilloscope, shows you the boop. Yep. He came up with the means to save that to a computer disk. And he won the competition, and the prize was a job with Texas Instruments. And he's now, I speak to him in LinkedIn now and again. We used to play squash, but I've not seen him for years and years and years and years. I've seen pictures of his house. It's like a palace. Absolutely scandalous. But I used to buy games, and he would come down to my house and he would crack them and then take a copy for himself. Yeah. And I thought, oh, wait a minute. But to be fair, he would give me games as well. But not my claim to fame, but he did. There was a copy of Jet Set Willie that was doing the rounds years ago, and it had thanks to Alan for providing the original and for providing me with coffee. So my name appeared in a kind of cracked message and it scrolled along the bottom and started Jet Set Willie. I've never been able to find that particular crack anywhere. If anyone can find it, let me know. But
it'd probably be district sort of like thing. It would have been in your local town and in your local county or whatever it was. That would have been on every copy, and then of course there'd have been one in Oxfordshire that would have a totally different.
I think once. The most kind of dabbling I ever did was I can't remember what it was called. Oh, it doesn't matter. Anyway, there was what was that? Not a compiler. What was it called? The thing where you could look at the machine code.
Oh yeah, an assembler.
An assembler, yeah. My mate asked, he's like, you need to show me how to do this. So he said, right, you go to that, then you type in C:000001, and that will show you that. So and then he says you press whatever it is, return, and it'll show you the next line. And so I started loading games into this thing, and I just go bum 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 bum, and then as soon as I saw like Delboy, I would go in and put Alan, and I would save it, and it would come up special thanks to Alan, and I was able to. That became a thing I did for a while. Put my own name into cracked messages.
I did that in something called Hex Edit. You used to have all the text on the left-hand side. On the right, it showed you all what the numbers were in characters.
That was kind of
you scrolled it down, and then you'd see the text that was in the game And you just changed it there, and it changed the number registered on the left. Yeah. Hex
That's what I
edit they
did.
used to.
But that was awesome. So anyway, yeah. So it's obviously games magazines, computer and video games. They dropped the kind of type-ins. Then, of course, the next kind of phase was the sort of the fanzine, the crashes, the zaps. I think, to my mind, these magazines were never really beaten because they employed people who were gamers first and foremost, and people like your Julian Rignalls, your Gary Paynes, your Gary Liddens. They had so much power. They reviewed games, and because they were precocious 17-year-olds, they didn't even. I mean, I've Gary Liddens, a mate. I know Gary really, really well. They didn't care. They said, "Well, this game's shit." Even if somebody said, "Oh, can we'll take you to the pub?" Yeah, that's fine. Oh, give us a copy of the game. Well, that game's absolutely shit. Don't buy it. And and they had so much power. They wielded so much power because they were first and foremost, they were gamers. And so people like, I always, I've always liked shoot 'em up. So if Jazz Rignall rated a game, I knew I was going to enjoy it. You know what I mean? Conversely, if he thought that game's rubbish, then I did. Did you have that kind of affiliation with like certain not programmers, certain reviewers?
Yeah. I mean, I obviously, just like you, it was Zap. Julian Rignall, I quite agreed with. Gary Linden. There was 3, wasn't there? And most of the time, if I saw a picture of them with their back to you, but they were on the side view, and they were going, "Oh, well, I don't think much of this." You know what I mean? The other one's there going, "Like this," and it was all very fun. And I'd read those bits probably before I read the review because I was, I'd be looking at that going, "What does he think of that? What is it?" And then I'd read the review, and then I'd look at the scores.
Aye,
it's weird because some people would look at the scores first before they start doing it. But it was weird, like me. I wanted to know what their opinion was before I went in. I've never looked at it from a behavioural point of view of why I did that. But I dare say I want to know what somebody's opinion is, and because they would sway my opinion probably before I've even read the review of it.
I was the same. I think you would look at, as you say, the back to the camera. You think, oh shit, 13%. I'm not even going to bother reading it, and I wouldn't even read it. I think, oh, boring, But conversely, if it's like that, and then like gold medal, and then you would pour over the review, But these guys, I've listened to a few podcasts with Julian Rignall getting interviewed, and I know Gary well. I've spoke to Gary quite a few times. Gary Penn. I've been in touch with Gary Penn quite a few times, and he keeps saying he's going to come on my channel, but I'm busy just now. But I'll let you know, and it never comes to anything. But I will get him on one day. Love to. A quick kind of brain mash moment. There was about 2-3 years ago. I was talking to Gary on Facebook, and I think I'd actually seen Gary the previous Wednesday. He came along to our computer club, and I was talking to Gary, and then I went to a place called Falkirk, and they've got this called the Falkirk wheel, and it takes a barge and lifts it up, and it places it in a sort of like a canal higher up. It lifts it, and it uses like is it gravity? It uses a pendulum system. Apparently, it takes more energy to boil a kettle than it does for it to lift this barge. It goes up. Anyway, I digress. That day, I'd been speaking to Gary Liddon in the morning, and then we went to the Falkirk wheel, and we were sitting in the cafeteria, and I'm like, that's bloody Gary. That's Gary Penn. I'm like, that's Gary Penn. And he was on my Facebook, but he didn't know me. I went, hey, hi Gary, I says, was you at Falkirk Wheel today? He went, I was. And I went, oh, I saw you. Oh, you should have came up and said hello. I went, what is the chances, if back in 1985 and I'm sitting reading the latest Zap, what is the chances that, 30 years later I'm going to potentially be in touch with these two guys in a single day,
Yeah.
Obviously made possible through the through the internet, you know. But yes, I mean these magazines like your Crash magazines. I mean, I think Crash, they actually, and you know, you wouldn't get away with this nowadays, but they basically got school kids to come in and play the games and write reviews.
Yeah,
it's now known as child labour, but you know what I mean. These kids were doing it for bugger all. You know what I mean?
I remember seeing all the pictures there, the black and white pictures of the kids coming in, and they'd even have an arcade challenge, wouldn't they, where they'd get a couple of people in and see if you could beat Julian or whatever it was at the games, and you had the high score tables. And this one, in this game, this Julian came first and this one came third and all of that sort of stuff. And at the end, after 5 games, the winner was Julian Rignall all the time or whatever it was. I remember all of those type of articles. They were quite fun. I just kept thinking to myself, how the hell do you get into that then? How do you get invited to that? Did they pull them off the street, or did you have to write in for that, or what? Did you have to publish some high score or something and get it published 3 times in 3 months, and then invite you in to have a challenge? I don't know. I can't quite remember.
Aye. Have you ever seen the? It's a. Let's see if I can find it. Actually, it'll probably be on. It'll be on YouTube. But let me just have a look. It's called. Let's have a wee look. Retro programs. Oh, my disk drive's taking a wee while to kick in. Let's see if I can find it. It's a US. Oh, there we go. Let's have a wee look. Yeah, have you seen the? It's called the Newsfield Years. Have you seen this?
No.
I'll tell you what. I mean, I think it's. I'm going to put it on my channel. I'm not going to monetize this one. I'm just going to stick it on and let you see it.
Okay.
In fact, what I need to do is I'm going to come off of this and I need to share it with sound. We don't have to watch all of it, but it is an interesting little thing. Share.
I've been watching a lot of documentaries recently, but I don't think I've seen this one at all. No.
This was let's. I'll put it full screen actually, so we can. No, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Let's go for this one.
Ah.
It really kind of captures the essence of what made them exciting.
Yeah. The one thing about that statement is I don't think I ever bought a copy of Antics.
Or Newsfield came out of its first incarnation, which was a mail order company. Oliver's brother Franco had been sourcing Spectrum games for a German because they couldn't get them over there. And we realised you couldn't really find them in the shops over here either. And it seemed like it would be a good business. So in 1983, we started Crash Micro Games Action.
I was reading your computer, I saw a little I think it was a quarter page or half page, black and white advert with loads and loads of games in reverse out text, which you can barely read. And I saw the address on it. It was Ludlow. I couldn't believe it. So I sort of went down there, knocked on the door, introduced myself, said, "Can I buy a game, please?" They said, "Yeah, come on in."
Most people at the time in the software business said you can't call anything like a catalogue Crash because it has such dreadful connotations, but we like the short, sharp sound of the word. So that came about. And I don't know, it was about 6 months in, we were contacted by a magazine distributor, Wells Gardner Darton, who'd actually shown a copy of one of our primitive catalogues to a buyer at Smith's. And W.H. Smith said if there was a magazine like that, they would probably buy it. And he said to us, so if you want to go ahead, you've earned the right to lose a lot of money. So the motivation really was to do a games-only magazine and to stick to the Sinclair Spectrum, because
400 games reviewed in a single magazine.
My recollection of the early years was very traumatic from that point of view, because I saw the enthusiasm that the product created, etc. But in terms of sort of commercial aspect, I didn't see the sort of figures to go with it, which usually come always at a later stage.
I don't think I realized that they were going to be quite so powerful as they turned out to be a few years later. But obviously that's what we were trying to do, and we were lucky.
Anyway, listen, what I'll do, I'm going to stop that just now. Hang on, I'll just stop that for a second. Yeah, I think that's readily available on YouTube. I don't think you have to buy it at all. I better not show it in full, but I shall share it with yourself, sir. Anyway, it doesn't the last 20 minutes, but it's a fascinating kind of look at it. So yeah, that was these kind of fan-based magazines sprung up. You had your Amtix for Amstrad, your Zap for C64, and you had your Crash for the Spectrum. Then, of course, I think the consoles. Oh, in fact, before we kind of move on, well, yeah, the consoles came along. Your NESs. So you had your sort of Nintendo magazines, and your Segas came along, and I think that's when the sort of the overall quality, not necessarily the content quality, but the presentation quality increased. I mean, one of the things that I keep talking about when I do these, I don't know if you watched the CNVG readout that I did on Monday.
Yes, I watched it with the Commando, yeah.
Yeah, when you watch that and you realise just how much black and white there was in these magazines, I always think of it as everything was in colour. Even Zap magazines, 99% of the pages, apart from the adverts, were in black and white. But these console magazines came along, they were shiny. It's the same with like the 16-bit machines, the Amiga, Atari ST, you had the more serious magazines, they were all in full colour. The paper, I mean, even like the paper that Zap and Crash was written on was like, it was almost like it was like newspaper kind of quality, whereas your edges and all these were all like high glossy. Obviously the price went up. I mean, I think the Zap we looked at was like 75 pence. Then they became a lot more expensive. But one thing that I kind of wanted to kind of touch on was the arrival of the free game. That I had actually moved onto 16-bit by time like your Zaps were giving away games. But obviously they did the same with Amiga Power and that. You started getting free discs, and I kind of felt that especially with like the 8-bit consoles, or 8-bit machines, I should say, 8-bit home computers, that I think the quality of the magazine was compromised because they were just putting out. I mean, I think it started off you got a free level. I mean, I remember seeing VG put out an Outrun music on one side of the tape, and on the other side it was 720. But then they started putting out a free game. Was it Batty, which was a fantastic Arkanoid game. Then, I mean, although I had an Amiga, I would pick up Zap, and because it would have like two. I mean, I think they got to the point where like, you were getting 3 tapes. Yeah, you lifted the magazine and it went, whoa! That it was so top heavy with tapes that instantly the cover would fall off it, because
if I remember rightly, they did get so top heavy they had to put a piece of J card on the top of the cover to stick it to the card, so it didn't rip the didn't keep taking off half the magazine with it when you pulled the tape off.
But were you still buying 8-bit games when Zap were giving away 2-3 cassettes?
Not really. I must admit, my remembrance of the cover disc was more when I got to the Amiga, because I went from a Commodore 64 pretty much to an Amiga. The consoles didn't give you free anything other than a booklet that says this is a map for this. And then the big thing for me was when I moved to the PC, and it was PC Zone, and it was CDs at first, and later on it would be DVDs. So they'd put a closed case DVD on the front, and it would have all sorts of stuff on it. I think even, if I remember rightly, even Retro Gamer was a DVD rather than a CD on the front. So
yeah, I've got all the DVDs.
So the evolution for me was floppy to CD. No, it was tape to floppy to CD to DVD, and I went through all the magazines that went through that pillar.
But I remember picking up like Zap magazine. You know, I would stand, and in fact, I think they would put them. I think people were going and nicking the bloody tapes off the cover.
Oh yeah, you said if this, didn't it say underneath, if this disc is missing, go and ask the counter person. The other person would say, yeah, some kids nicked that. Sorry, mate, you can't have that. We haven't got any spares out the back. You know, they haven't.
But yeah, I mean, I remember looking at them, picking it up, and thinking, wait a minute, the magazine's got 16 pages in it. And I remember I'm thinking this can't be for real, and I'm like, really? I mean, I'm talking about maybe 1991. Wait a minute, Zap? Zap magazine. I can't remember what it became. Something else. It renamed itself.
Zap and C60. Was it Zap and Amiga something or other? Wasn't it? Zap.
Let me have a wee look.
Well, when it was actually at the beginning of that video, it said on one of the pictures that it showed, it was the Amiga part was in part of the letter P at the bottom. It said incorporating Amiga something or other or something.
Zap. What was it called? Hang on a wee second. I'll just share the screen again. At the screen. Yeah, these are all the C60. These are all the Commodore magazines. Amiga Force. Was it Commodore? I think it was Commodore Force. Let's have a look. Yeah,
those two merged, and you could tell by the artwork and the sort of like format of that picture there
you go. May 1993. I mean, how many tapes did you have? There you go. Can we actually see that? The two terrific tapes which should appear here are obviously missing. I mean, you were getting two tapes. I mean, what did I have there? I don't know how many games it had in it.
It says about the news agent there. It says, something about, what was it? Say, bottom dollar that your news agent has removed them for safekeeping. Yeah, they never did.
They're probably doing. So, yeah, this would be, when was this? 1993. I mean, this was still the Commodore 64. I mean, let's have a quick. So, advert. I'll make it a wee bit weird, actually, so we can see it. Right, so advert. I'll make it even weird, actually. There you go. So there's a cover. So we've got advert,
contents,
kind of contents,
news article,
advert. Well, there you go. It's now. There you go. You can get. There's the games they're giving away. Football Manager. So that's just basically telling you what games you're getting free. More demo. So this was all the free stuff, and they're reviewing the Trolls. I think it was. Yeah, there's one game. I mean, these are all budget games.
Oh, there's your favourite in the top right-hand corner. Look, Rainbow Islands.
Yeah, so these are all.
Chuck Rock, that'll cheese it. That'll cheer everybody up. Look, Chuck Rock's there.
But these are all old games.
You can't turn around and say Main Master doesn't actually give people what they want. You've had Rainbow Islands, you've had Chuck Rock, all in the space of a couple of minutes, and you haven't been able to see that for weeks.
So yeah, I mean, there's really no tips. I mean, what the hell was that? Playing tips. Shite. I mean, there's no games. So at that point, I'm horrible. There's a mailbag.
Yeah.
Yeah. At that point, I mean, how many public set? There's really no. I don't think there was really. Well, there's a couple of games.
You got 68 pages. I mean, that's not exactly like a huge.
Yeah. So we're at page 45, and you've got a couple of. I mean, a budget game at this point. They were based. I don't think there was really many, if any, new games. I mean, there's a budget game by Zeppelin. Couple of games. There wasn't really much in the way of new games at that point. And it was. I think people were probably buying it. People were buying it just for the games.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously, like you were talking about the PC. When I first got the PC, I couldn't wait to get a CD drive, because you got this CD now. CD holds the equivalent of. I remember seeing a picture of CD. There were 700 floppies. You're like, oh my god, 700 floppies. And it was awesome. You were getting all these demos and all that kind of stuff. And that was a big draw. But and then of course, by that point we're into PC magazines, and there were so many. I deliberately don't bother with PC magazines because I just find them quite boring. But I think by the time we got to the mid-90s, magazines, I don't know, they were just becoming. I just found them extremely dull. They lacked the spirit of the original, your Zaps, your magazines of the early days.
Well, I do remember my favourite magazine at the time was PC Zone when I was buying PC magazines. And I do remember the death of PC Zone because they said this is the very last issue. And I was quite sad, actually, even though you're quite right. The internet had just taken over. The magazine had been declining for years and years and years. But PC Zone was a real staple for me. PC Zone, I have to say.
There's PC Zone edition 97, Christmas 2000. Would that possibly be the last? Let's have a look.
I'm not sure that was the last one, to be quite honest. The cover doesn't.
Yeah, wouldn't. I'm just trying to see, and maybe that's the only ones I've got. Yeah, no, there's quite a few missing. 97. Yeah, nah, obviously not. But yeah, by time, I mean, you were saying you quite enjoyed that. I don't know. I would buy. I mean, I would buy all these magazines, and I always remember. In fact, one of my mates told me a story. I mean, I used to go into John Menzies, and I would buy all these magazines. And I remember my mate telling me a couple of years ago. He went into his local, I think it was Morrison's, and he picked up something like 5 magazines. Oh, I want that, because they all had different demo discs and all that. And he said that he was in front, and he was scanning his magazines, and there was a wee old woman behind him, and or was it she in front of him? I think it was, whatever it was. And I think she was like, she had a wee magazine, and she went, "Oh, that's ridiculous, the price of that." And as she was still packing up her messages, the woman scanned my mate's 5 magazines, and she went, "Beep, beep, beep, beep. That's £32." The wee old woman just stared at him like, £32 for magazines. And and I don't think I ever bought 6 in one go, but I remember maybe somebody spending like close on 20 quid. And all I think was, I've just spent 20 quid on bits of paper that I mean, I would, with things like PC Zone and Edge and that, I would just go, not interested. I'm doing that, clicking on the mouse. Sorry, I would just go, nah, not interested. Warcraft, nah. Before I got to an article, I was on page 71, and I'd maybe read like, Sensible Soccer, the new, great, adventure, not. And I thought, it's taken me 20 minutes to read this magazine. The 3/4 of the magazine I've not read. I've got no interest in reading it. And that's when I started to, I thought, I'm kind of done with magazines. But we bought them because we didn't have the internet.
Yeah. I've remembered why I liked PC Zone as much as I did, and I was a very naughty boy. I'm sorry I have to say this, but I was a very naughty boy. So I'd just moved to Manchester. I'd worked out about MAME, so 1997, 1998. And we up in Manchester, NTL was a big company, and they supplied you with the satellite, which was cable, back then, and they gave you your internet, and they offered really, really fast internet. And I was reading on sort of like, I suppose, what you call the black web back then. You want to discover news groups. Oh, okay. So somebody mentioned the word news groups, and I went and researched it. And PC Zone used to have this thing at the back that said the top 10 RTS games, the top 10 shoot 'em ups, the top 10 platform games, all of this every month. And they used to say at the, this is always the number one game, and there was the top 5, and they did it for all the genres. And I couldn't afford the £40 for a game all the time. So I'd look at these top 5, and they changed, every so often. And I'd go to Game Copy World. Oh no, well, I shouldn't really mention some of these sites anymore, but you can imagine what I was doing. I was sort of like getting a CD burner, and I was doing a little bit of this and that. And I got myself quite a bit of a collection, really. And I thought to myself, well, do you know what? They've had no end of money out of me, because I could only afford like one game a month, because I was buying a house. It was like there was a mortgage, there was the gas bill, the electricity. I was a single person in a 3-bedroomed house, so it was costing me quite a bit. So I for a couple of years, I have to turn around and say I was a very naughty boy, and I managed to play an awful lot of games all of a sudden. And they were all the top ones.
I think we're all there. I was into the old news groups as well, Easy News as well. And then of course you had RARs, and then you would download a game. I don't know what it would be. I mean, back in dial-up, you'd download a game, it'd maybe be like 178 meg, and you're all great. And then you would open up WinZip, missing zip for RAR.
Oh yeah.
And then you got into the whole thing of par files,
yeah.
And then it could rebuild it, but you had to have so many for it to rebuild them.
The polyfiller of the digital age is par files.
Are they still a thing, par files?
Yeah, they're still there. I mean, basically, you can still, most news readers, I think, these days give you the par program as built into it, so that you download it, and at the end it unzips itself or it builds itself. But back in the day, you used to have a newsreader, and you used to have this par program, and you'd put them in a folder, and then you'd run it, and you'd click on the first RAR, and it would go down and tell you how many bits were missing, and then it
was magical.
Look at these volumes.
You're missing like RAR 10 and 15, and then it would go rebuilding 23%, 24%, 25%, 20%. Like, oh.
if anybody can take anything from this podcast, this casting, is look at the history of what news groups is all about, and understand why that one is really, really hard to actually knock, because the news group is actually the backbone of absolutely every internet service provider that's out there. In fact, it's got a news group server on every internet service provider, and they join up, and it's what they call a parity. It's whenever something got broken, it would pick up it from another server and fix itself, because it would be duplicated it would be on every server. You put it on one server and it'd be across 50,000 servers, literally in seconds, because news groups was all about getting news to people, and it was just supposed to be a text thing. It turned into a digital thing when they worked out that you could basically split things up into so many sort of files and segments, and actually make a digital executionable from it. That's how that worked.
And then join them all back together again.
Join them all back together.
You could create a single exe. Yeah. No, I mean, I think it was something. I think it was something that everybody did.
It's just that everybody now talks torrent, but I was brought up with news groups.
Yeah.
And that's where I learned.
What was it? Was it free download manager I used to use? There was various download. I think I used FileZilla. Was it FileZilla?
Yeah, well, I used Newsbin, and there was one that looked like a there was one that looked like a spy. I can't remember why. It was almost like a little character, like Muggsy Revenge type icon.
I remember. Download Agent or so. Yeah, I do remember. I had that one as well. Yeah.
But I must admit, my go-to was Newsbin. I have to say, probably, yeah.
Mental, but yeah. So, Kenny, just to kind of wrap, I'm just conscious of time to kind of wrap things up. So, but you know, I think with I'd like to have kind of spoke about this a bit longer, but I think it's safe to say that when the internet came along, it pretty much put the nail in the coffin of magazines.
Yeah.
You know.
You could always see the writing was on the wall as the magazines got thinner and thinner and thinner. You used to think it was because there was less games that were coming out, but actually there's the price of the paper, the fact that you could actually put this on a PDF and put it on the DVD disc. In fact, I think later on there was just a published magazine that was actually on a DVD. It was actually a case on on a shelf being sold, you know, as a magazine that was actually a PDF on the disc itself. And that's when you saw the writings on the wall that these magazines are on their way out. I mean, there we go.
When I spoke to Dominic Diamond about Games Master, and I don't know if you're aware they're mentioning they're going to reboot it, but although it'll be it's like bringing back the Atari, it'll just be name only. But you know, Dominic said that, you know, it's not. You can't. Games Master back then was like the internet of its day. It gave video gamers the chance to see a game that's never been released running. It says now the internet's killed that. And then when I spoke to Dave Perry, the games animal, who used to also be in Games Master, Dave published. He was the sort of editor for a lot of some of the massive magazines, and he himself said that, you know, the internet has killed these. He says, because now you can go into Twitch, you can go into Reddit, whatever it is you want to see. You know, I mean, somebody was talking about is this the greatest C64 game ever written? I can't remember what it's called. And I just, you know, went into YouTube, boom, 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 bang, and I watched a 15-minute video of said game running. So, you know, I think magazines have had their day. I'm sure. I mean, I still do enjoy buying books and reading them in the bath, whatever it is. You know, you can't take your well, I do take my phone in the bath, but anyway, that's another story. I've never dropped it once, but yeah, I think, you know, magazines.
You know that's going to happen tonight now, don't you? You know that's going to happen now that you've said I've never dropped it in the bath. You'll have one tonight. You will drop that now in the bath, legitimately.
Yeah, but so I mean, the internet has pretty much. I mean, I think you can. I do see you could still buy PC magazines, but I would be interested to know. For anybody that's watching or listening to this podcast, I believe video, I would be interested to know, does anybody still buy computer magazines? And if so, why? Is there a particular reason? Is it because you still enjoy the ability to lie back in your couch, or in my case, the bath, and just flicking through a magazine and reading it, whatever? I mean, the only magazine I do subscribe to, and I have since issue 1, is Retro Gamer.
Yeah,
I've got to be honest with you. I mean, I think it's up to issue 260. It's been going for about 15 years. I've got every single edition. I've got all the DVDs, all that went with it. I'll be honest with you, I don't even read it now, but I think I pay 22 quid a year or something, whatever it is. It still drops through my letterbox, and all I do is I pick it up and I put it on top of
good job you don't treat your bills like that, innit? Because
they just get flung into next door's neighbour's garden. I've not actually read. I think I've got probably 3 years worth of Retro Gamers that I've just not read, and I think it's because we've now got to the point where they're featuring games on the PlayStation 2, and I've got no interest.
Well, they must have got to a point now, and I don't know this because I bought the very first issue, but I didn't buy every issue in between, that you can only visit Pac-Man so many times before you've got to move on. You know, they've interviewed the main coder. They've gone back to it 5 years later and interviewed the person who did the music for it or whatever it is, and they've interviewed the person who engineered the case. You can't go back to it again. It's the 25th anniversary, so there's that special, and then there's nowhere to go. And there's only so many games, you know, before you can turn around and say, well, we've done Marble Madness now 5 times. We've done Pac-Man 4 times. Flying Shark's been done now a couple of times. Gauntlet, you know, and so forth and so forth and so forth, because they fell into the trap of doing all the home versions at the same time as they're talking about the arcade version. So if you can't go back. So after about 10 or 15 years, you've run out of ideas. You've got to then go to something that's more modern, and then it's not retro anymore. And there's some point you've got to turn around and say, what is retro now? Because some people would say the PS3 is retro now.
Oh, here's a question to you. What is retro gaming wise?
Yeah, I mean, I used to say that it was before 2000. I used to say there's a cut-off point. And I used to say, let's say 2000 then. So that would be the handhelds were there and all of that sort of stuff. In 2000, I got to the PC, you see, and that's when I started emulating. And when I was starting to emulate, I saw all the old machines that were there, and I was saying, so that's retro. All these things that have got emulators. And when the Nintendo 64 emulator came out, I said, that's when you're starting to turn something as not being retro, because that's current. So I even think the Nintendo 64 is not retro in some ways.
It's interesting because I've my passion when it comes to talking about games is 8-bit. It's
8-bit, yeah.
No matter what, it's the nostalgia factor. It makes me feel, when I talk about games and I play these games, it takes me back to a happy time in my life, and I do genuinely have an interest in them. When I would probably say kind of Mega Drive is about the most retro. Anything from Mega Drive back is retro. Anything from Mega Drive going forwards, it'd be ridiculous to say that's current. But that's
but you are talking there 80, 88, 89.
Yeah,
because you know, I mean, that's when Mega Drive was around.
Oh, the Commodore Amiga. That's where, like, I went from the Amiga, and then I think was it
1993.
I got a PC. The funny thing is, I've had a PC. The PC was my only source of video games until about, I don't know, 2004, 4 or 5, and that's when I was suddenly aware of, wait a minute, eBay, Commodore 64. Hang on a second, I'm going to bloody buy one of them.
Yeah.
Spectrum, 30 quid. I'm going to buy one of them, and that's when I started to realise, hang on, I can buy all these machines that I sold for, you know, way years and years ago. Because back then, you wanted to get a new computer, you had to sell the one you had. It wasn't a question of why didn't you hang on your C64. Well, how the bloody hell am I going to fund my Atari ST? I had to sell what I had. So yeah, from about 93, 94 to about 2005. So you're talking about 12 years.
Yeah.
The PC was my. It was the only computer I had. It was my
and that virtually is the 8-bit era, if you think about it. Atari 2600 all the way up to, you know, the 16-bit computers that were coming out is about 10 to 12 years.
Same kind of timeline, but weirdly, I don't have any real nostalgia for any 12 years.
No.
I don't know why. Because I played Doom, and maybe I've.
I think to me there's less highs because the expectation lowered. I wasn't that wowed that a CD was doing full motion video and all this sort of stuff. But every game that was coming out in my 8-bit, and of course my age was there as well, was a highlight. It was like, wow, and I've got to see what the next level looks like, and I've got to see what the next sound thing comes out.
I listen to the synth music on, you know, whatever it is. It's awesome. You know, you never, ever. I mean, you know, you've been very kindly giving me a lot of like Steam games and all that, and you put them on, and you're like, wow. But you never, ever. I mean, I'll buy Last of Us 2, whatever, and I'll not get it on the phone. Wait, you need to check this game out. Fucking hell, it's amazing. The games that I can rant about is, whoa, you ought to see Moose Life. Oh, it's brilliant, and it's old. It's old.
Yeah, you cost me a fortune that day. That's all I got to turn around and say. I bought every bloody Jeff Minter game in on Steam without it being a sale. Jesus.
But yeah, I don't know what it was. I think after I got the PC, I don't know. I just kind of lost interest. But getting back to Retro Gamer, yeah, they've now gone beyond the timeline where I've got any real interest. I'm not interested in talking about a PlayStation 2 game. Got no interest at all. PlayStation 3, even less. And I would never buy a magazine and look at the latest PlayStation 4 game. I've just kind of lost interest in it, But that's, again, really down to myself. But do you ever see, just to kind of finish this video off, Del, do you ever see magazines making a big resurgence, coming back, being mega popular again? Can you see that?
It's the age-old question that comes up for, is the comic industry dead? Because people are saying it's going digital. So you'll see that Marvel have got an online presence now, and you can get your comics now in one monthly subscription, and you can read through them all. My answer to it all is that the magazine will never ever come back. I don't think. The comic is a little bit more of a harder sell, because you never own it. Once you stop your subscription, you haven't got it anymore, and all you did was just spend money for them to maintain their server. At the end of the day, that's what you did, right? So is the printed form dead? And papers circulation is now diminishing to the point where people are reading the papers now on their mobile phones.
Yeah,
so you have to go, there's going to be a point where that medium is dead. So is the magazine ever going to come back when you've got a paper circulation that's diminishing by 1 million every 2 years? No, the magazine will never come back. It can't. Once it's gone, I don't see how you can have as many Kickstarters as you want. I don't think it'll come back. What Zap is doing is probably the only way a magazine can come back, and that is a quarterly.
Yeah, and
something that you're servicing your fans for years by giving you some sort of retro kick, and you're getting it every 3 months is something that probably works. But what we knew as a magazine, weekly, monthly, no.
Yeah.
Never going to come back.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose your Zap annuals and your Crash annuals, which are fantastic, they are just feeding the nostalgia people like ourselves, that people of a certain age, we crave it, sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, there's been a few, I think there's a new Amiga magazine that's going to be coming out shortly, but I don't think you're ever going to see it in the shelves. I think people are just, why would you want to spend £6-7 quid on a magazine when you can just jump onto the web and watch a video? Even what we're doing right now, potentially, my channel potentially is kind of like a fanzine reviewing games, playing games, but it's all done digitally now. And the fact that people like ourselves can get a cheapo webcam and just record something,
I'd like to say it was your game playing skills, but half the videos I watch of yours, I just want to see whether you've manicured the nails or not. This video. Here's my latest handout. Oh, has he done his nails today? Yeah, look, he's definitely manicured. Look at that. No, anyway, they're very entertaining. Your videos.
On that bombshell, I'm going to. I think we're going to cut this short now. So listen. I hope you've all enjoyed watching, listening to this. These are always great fun. It's much better doing these with somebody else. You can only talk so much when you're doing these on your own, but it's always a pleasure to have you on my channel, Del, so thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you so much. That was brilliant.
Good stuff. So anyway, listen, guys, as always, thank you. Take care. Thanks for supporting the channel and my podcast. And finally, guys, thank you very much for watching and for listening. Till next time, take care.